Hey, so welcome to my car, and I'm in my garage charging right now, and it's a fine thing. I have no issues with charging in my garage. The funny thing is, it's become a little bit more of a nuisance as I think about charging my car and how I deal with it. And it's a kind of a subtle nuisance thing, but if I think about it, I've been charging my car on average somewhere between 15 times and 18 times a month. It's a pretty large number of times that I'm charging, and I'm always looking for a charging port, whether it's a supercharger, some place that's randomly around somewhere that's got a J1772, or whether it's at home. Now at work, they have 6 stations that we can charge at, and that's terrific, but now there's something like 30 people that have electric cars, so it becomes a bit of a nuisance to try and actually do the charging at work sometimes. If you get there early enough, you get a space, you may give it up after 4 hours, but you can't charge every day. I know some people who travel longer distances who do charge more or less every day because they have to be able to get home and whatever, but it's kind of a nuisance in some ways. And for those of us who don't need it that way, we're just using it for the convenience and the fact that it's free, maybe I don't need to charge as often at work. You know, if I think about the cost to charge at 11 cents a kilowatt hour, even if I'm going from 0 to full on my charge, I'm still only spending $6.60 a charge. And if I do it every single time to close to 90% and just make sure I do that every time, I probably would only spend, you know, something like $30 a month, right? Maximum. So it'd probably be well under that actually. So if I think about that, it's a pretty cost-effective way to run my car, to actually just charge it at home and make my life easier and eliminate a lot of the nuisance factor. Now sometimes the nuisance factor can't be avoided. You're out somewhere and you need a charge. We went on our little road trip and we needed a charge along the way. That kind of thing happens, and that's okay. We spent the time and the effort to actually get the charge at that point because that was a kind of a known commodity. But in day-to-day life, it's kind of a nuisance. I can't just go to any gas station. I have to go to some place that takes the Tesla, and I can use the adapter to put the J1772 on there, or I can go ahead and just charge it a Supercharger. And those are fine choices, but I might as well just charge it home, and I can just leave it plugged in overnight and have it ready to go at 8 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, whenever I'm going to leave for work. And that's a fine choice too, and it's a little bit easier. So I have to kind of find that balance of where it's going to be easy to charge. So it's kind of an interesting problem we face as electric car owners. Like I said, it's a minor nuisance. It's not a huge deal, but I've been noticing it more and more, and it's kind of been, I don't know, I don't want to use the word frustrating because that's not fair either, but it's almost been frustrating me over time because it's just one of those things you kind of go, why is this so complicated to be able to charge the car? And it's not that it's hard, it's just not as convenient, let's say, as going into a gas station and just putting gas in your car, because there's gas stations in every corner. The nozzle is universal, and it only takes between 5 and 10 minutes to put gas in your car, and you'll get 300 miles out of it. I'm only getting a maximum of 200 miles out of this car, maybe 190 190 if I put it at 90%. So I've got to charge a lot more often, especially when I'm driving around and I've got the kids to take places and other things happening. So it's just something that I've been thinking about a little bit more over time, just sort of that factor of, what does it take to do it? At the cost to do the charging, at, $6.60 to go from 0 to full, it's only going to cost me 30 bucks a month. You're only talking maximum $360 a year. It's not a big deal, right? It's under $400 anyway. So really not that expensive, and my gas car would cost me probably $1,200 to $1,300 a year. So you're still saving around $1,000. So, it's a really, really nice thing. It's just the nuisance factor of actually having to deal with it and drive around and do things. So just something I wanted to share. It was just an observation, some little nuisance thing that bothers me a little bit. It's not a huge deal, but it's one of those things that's been kind of nagging at me a little bit. Geez, I have to take it and charge it again. Oh, I have to go here. Oh, I have to go there. And I always have to be thinking about making sure it's charged. And to that point, let me take you inside the car. I want to show you one other thing that I've been thinking about. So a funny thing happened. I was thinking about taking a trip to Key Largo. It's a destination that's about an hour and a half, maybe a little more, away from us. And the distance is not that great, but you would have to supercharge somewhere along the way. You have to get a charge to be able to get there. So as I look at it, I realize that we're here, and this is Homestead, and Key Largo is here. And there's another charger that's down there in Marathon. That's another hour or 45 minutes away from there. So it's not convenient in that sense. But if I go ahead and I look at it, and I see what we've got in terms of distance and so forth, it's going to come back and tell me that where I am right now, and right now I'm at about, a little under 45% charge, right around 50% charge, I guess. It would be an hour and 52 minutes to get there. It's 85 miles to get down to Key Largo, and it would take me down there. What it's showing me though is something interesting. I would arrive there with about 5%, but there's no way I could return home with the 5%. It's just not possible. So a round trip that way is not possible. So I would have to make a decision to stop in Homestead to charge on my way down. So I would travel to here. So basically if I traveled to here instead, right, and I stop there, then I could get a charge and I could continue down to Key Largo, and then probably from Key Largo I'd have to stop again at Homestead on the way back is my guess. But it's an interesting problem that I would have because this does not give me a round trip. It's just, it doesn't do that for me. It doesn't tell me what the round trip distance would be and how much charge I need to be able to make that round trip. So it's a bit of a gap that's there in the software, because it doesn't give me enough information to be able to make this trip in particular. Because there really is, you know, if you think about it, the way we are in Florida here, we're in South Florida, this is Key West all the way down at the end. That's the farthest point you can go. So if I were to make the trip down to Key West, I would have to certainly stop in Marathon. So let's just do that for the sake of argument here. If I wanted to go down to Key West, I would have to stop in Marathon, I'm certain. Probably would tell me to charge up in Homestead as well. So I'm going to have to stop. Have to stop in Homestead. Okay, so it's telling me with the charge I have right now, I would have to stop in Homestead, then I could make the trip to Key West. And I'd arrive there with 14%, which wouldn't be enough to make it back to Marathon. So you see the inherent problem here because of the direction I'd have to go and the fact that there are no real charging destinations here other than Marathon and Homestead. It kind of leaves me in a bind that I'd have to plan a little bit more on my own before I would have to take the trip, so I could make a decision about what I could do to make that trip, because it's not considering the fact that once I'm there, there is nowhere for me to go except back. So it's a kind of a funny thing that happens that I can't really consider how to do that unless I really think it through and plan for going back that way. I thought maybe there was a way to set it up to tell me what to do on the return trip, but there's nothing that does that. It just doesn't do that in the charging stop. So it's a minor gap that I noticed as I was thinking about potentially going to Key Largo. And I'm not saying I would, but I was just kind of thinking about it. What would I do if I wanted to make it all the way down there? So this is the problem. It's kind of a silly thing. It's trivial in a way, because if I'm going anywhere else, there's always another way to go. You can always go here. If I'm headed up to, let's say, Orlando, I can go along and I can actually go this way or this way or this way and make some charging stops along the way. Now we'll look at a couple of apps to see if there's anything different that's there, but it's just a bit of a challenge and something I had to consider when I started to think about the potential to go all the way down to Key Largo. So let's go out to the abetterrouteplanner.com website and make some decisions about what we could do. Since it has a more comprehensive way to look at the route planning, let's go ahead and put Key Largo in there and plan a route from where we are down to Key Largo. So we see the route, which should be able to leave with 90% and arrive there with 54%. I'm a little dubious about whether that's actually correct, but it's probably right. It's probably pretty close. So that tells us what we need to get down there in an hour and 15 minutes. Now let's go ahead and come back and add another destination. We'll add our own destination coming back here again, so we do the round trip basically. So if we add our position back again and we plan the route, it should tell us what it'll take to do the whole route. So it's saying we could leave with 90, get there with 54, then leave there again and get back with 18%. That's maybe cutting it a little close, but it's probably okay. It would probably work out in that case that we could go directly down there with 90%, not have to stop for a charge, and then turn around and come back. Now, if we drive around down there at all, it might change the concept a little bit, and we may have to stop in Homestead on the way back. So let's go ahead and go into the settings, and we'll change the starting charge to 70% instead of 90%, and we'll plan the route again. Now, what this will do for us is it'll tell us that we'll need to stop in Florida City on the way back. So we can get to Key Largo with about 34%, then we'll charge up a little bit in Florida City, that's the Homestead charging station, and be able to make it back to our current location. So the distance is such that this should work out. It's not quite as far as, say, driving to Naples where I had to do a charge over there, but we want to be conscientious about it because the one thing we don't want to do is run out of a charge while we're driving down that way, just because of the nature of the distance we're going and the fact that there's no other routes we can take to get off and actually do a charge. Now, alternatively, let's take a look at the PlugShare app. The PlugShare app should give us some information about some of the other charging stations we have available to us that maybe aren't superchargers, because it should list out all kinds of chargers where if we kind of get stuck, we could stop in and at least get some charge to get us to somewhere. So as we look around, we can see these different places that are there. There's some wall outlets that are available, and in some cases, people have houses that they have where they will allow you to come in and get a charge if you're nice, and you ask politely. But also, there's some places that have the J1772. So here's an example, this bungalows. And we can go in and look at it, and it says, oh, free for guests only. So that won't work for us because we're not going to be a guest there. But we can go on and look at some of the other ones that are there. Let's take a look at another one. Here's this Reef Environmental place. And this one actually has a couple of charging ports that are available. So this one might actually work. Though, oh, wait, they charge $4.95 an hour for getting there. So that might not be the right answer either, but it's an interesting idea. Okay, so we could move on and check the next one. So here's another location we could go to, the Seafarer Resort. So let's take a look at that. And this one looks like it has some interesting prospects. Oh, except it's pay to park there. So maybe this wouldn't work either. So this is the challenge, is when you're looking for a place, you're trying to find somewhere that matches up with free, easy to use, convenient. And so far we haven't found one that quite matches that. So let's check one other one. Here's Baker's Cay Resort. That's a little bit further south. This one looks like it has some possibilities. It's open 24/7. It's free. It's got a J1772. This would be the kind of station we might want to go to. It's only got one station, so there's always the possibility that it won't be available when we go there. But anyway, we could check it out. So it gives us some options in terms of things that are not Tesla and not anything else that we might be able to go to if we needed to in order to get a charge. Now, zooming in on the map, we can see that it's just a space that's available. It looks like there's actually two. I'm not sure why it says there's one, but that's okay. So anyway, it gives us some options on things we could do if we wanted to while we're driving around and we may need to stop somewhere. We can also go further back up the causeway and go back up a little further. Oh, look, the Marriott is here too. Now this one is interesting because it tells you that you may need a 25-foot extension cord. So you should bring an extension cord and maybe your adapter so that you might be able to plug in if you need to. So just something to keep in mind, that maybe that would be helpful in some way just because of where these particular chargers are located. But it's another option that you might have available to you if you needed it. So that's my story. I just wanted to share that, think about charging and how often I charge and what it takes to charge. And it's a terrific car, and it's really nice to be able to charge it like this and, you know, be environmentally friendly and move the needle a little bit. It's funny because profit is always the motivation, as I mentioned before. For car companies, they're in it to sell the most cars, and the gas cars are the easiest to produce and the most convenient for them. So they prefer to do that. So some of the companies will fight hard against the electric standards to try and produce cars that they want to produce, that make them the most profit. So, you know, I think I'm doing some good here in a general sense, and it's a joy to drive. I like driving it. So there's a win there all the way around for me. It's just, you know, everyone has their own thing that they like. And, you know, if you like an electric car, I highly recommend you try it. You know, take one for a test drive, any of the cars. There's several electric models that are out there, and there's more coming. So take one for a test drive and see what you think. You know, this one has just got a sweet feel to it, and that's why I wanted to have it. And the spaceship-y version of the software and everything on the console was really cool. I probably could have settled for one of the other cars that's out there, but I'm very happy with this one, don't get me wrong. So anyway, that's my story. Just wanted to share that with you. I'll be charging up for a few hours today, and then I'll take it out later.